Jim Jordan released bombshell news earlier this week that the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government have obtained documents proving the U.S. government was directly involved in the censoring of Americans on social media, and even worse, involved in actively censoring Donald Trump while he was still the sitting president of the United States. Let's go over the thread that he released on Twitter. Here it is. Jim Jordan, Representative Jim Jordan. He didn't get the House speakership role, but he's still doing his job, fighting the machine. Bombshell report on the censorship industrial complex. Hundreds of secret reports show how the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, which is CISA is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So that one is the government agency. There's also a CIS. So there's a CISA and a CIS. So you don't want to get those confused. That is what got Matt Taibbi in trouble when he was sitting in front of, when he was testifying to Congress, and they said, you lied. And they sent him that mean letter threatening him. They said, you lied because you said that it was this government agency that was censoring, but it wasn't. It was Center for Internet Security, which is a nonprofit, 501 nonprofit organization. So there is CIS and CISA. CIS is a nonprofit organization, Center for Internet Security. CISA is Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a government agency. Okay, so he's saying hundreds of secret reports show how the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, and the GEC, which is the State Department, Stanford, and others worked together to censor Americans before the 2020 election, including true information, jokes, and opinions. Now, this particular censoring has to do with election claims. So if anybody was claiming that the elections were stolen or rigged, or that there was suspicious activity, or that there was issues with the mail-in votes, or whatever it might be regarding the election, this is what they're talking about having been censored. There was a lot of COVID voices who were censored. We saw that. That case is now the Missouri versus Biden administration. That one is headed to the Supreme Court, and that one involves Drs. Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Aaron Kheriaty, and Dr. Martin Kulldorff, amongst others. That one is a different case. That one is about COVID censorship. This one is about election censorship. So he goes on to say the federal government, disinformation experts at universities, big tech, and others worked together through the Election Integrity Partnership to monitor and censor Americans' speech. So the Election Integrity Partnership was an agency that was formed. It was put together by Stanford and I want to say the University of Washington. And they were the ones who were supposed to be, Center for, University of Washington and Stanford University put this together. And they were saying, well, we just want to, make sure that our elections are free and free from sort of influence. So they were doing the Election Integrity Partnership. But this is where Jim Jordan says, no, the bombshell was found that this organization was actually created and directed by the U.S. government. So he says the federal government, disinformation experts at universities, big tech, and others work together through the Election Integrity Partnership to monitor and censor American speech. Now, according to one EIP, so EIP is the Election Integrity Partnership, that's Stanford University of Washington organization. One EIP member said that the EIP was created at the request of CISA. CISA being the government agency. So it was created, the government was like, hey, we can't censor and do this on our own, but you can. So why don't you create something? And, then that's a little workaround. So showing that the EIP was created as a workaround for the government to censor Americans and monitor activity online. So he shows some emails, these emails proving that these are that this was the directive, the emails showing, so he says, so Jim goes on to say, here's how it worked. EIP stakeholders, including the federal government, give me a second here, my EIP stakeholders, including the federal government, would submit misinformation reports. So the stakeholders are the people who are involved in the EIP, and they would then submit these reports. This is what we think is misinformation. So they would maybe peruse the internet, and they'd look at Twitter, and they'd read your threads on Twitter, and they'd get all mad, and then they'd say, hey, I think this is misinformation. They would submit it. And this included federal government agency workers. So the EIP would then analyze the report and find similar content across platforms. Then the EIP would submit the report to big tech, often with the recommendation on how to censor. So the government would say, we don't like this thread, or we don't like what this person's saying on Twitter. Then the EIP would say, let's take a look. And they would look at that thread or post or whatever. And then they would look at a bunch of other stuff on social media. Maybe they would look for similar content, see how viral is this idea, who's spreading this idea, where did it come from, right? So they would look at that. And then they would say to big tech, then EIP, not the government, would then go over to big tech and say, we found this misinformation coming from Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, and here's our recommendation of what you should do about that misinformation. So Jim Jordan says that the only way the select subcommittee on the weaponization of the government and the Judiciary Committee were able to get these documents was through basically threatening Stanford. They had to say to them, you have a subpoena that you have to be turning over this information to us, and you're not. You were supposed to do this for a while now. It's been a month, and you haven't. And if you don't, if you are in contempt of this, then we're going to end up we're gonna take some action against you. We'll have no choice but to go after you further. So finally, Stanford turned over the documentation proving that this organization, the EIP, was actually created at the behest of the American government and worked in collusion with the American government to censor Americans online. But it's worse than that. It's not just that they censored regular average people. They censored duly elected politicians, people who were elected by the people, and they were censored. That included the sitting president of the United States at the time, which raises a lot of questions. The fact that this was done under the Trump administration while Trump was president, and yet he was the target of a lot of this censorship regime, really raises the question of who's really truly in charge of our government. Are we the people in charge of the government, or is there a deep state? It does bring up and lean evidence towards there's a deep state. If the government is censoring, if the administration is directing the censorship of the sitting president who's supposed to be in charge of that administration and undermining his authority and undermining the people who have voted for this person, there is a deep state. Who's running that deep state? Who are these actors that believe that they could subvert American democracy and silence and censor a duly elected leader? That is something that needs to be investigated. What is crazy about this is that's not being investigated. What's really insane about this is it's bad enough that they censored Americans. It's bad enough that they censored politicians and leaders and the president, the sitting president of this country. What's also bad is that they're not even investigating the who. Who were the people who directed the censorship? That is what we need to find out, and those people need to be held accountable. They cannot be subverting American democracy or an administration they're supposed to be working for as non-biased, non-political government bureaucrats. So the people targeted, according to this list, was Donald Trump while he was sitting president, Senator Tom Tillis. So they went after senators, Newt Gingrich, Governor Mike Huckabee. They went after Marjorie Taylor Greene, Sean Hannity. They went after Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Jack Posobiec. They went after the Babylon Bee, which is a satire news organization. They went after satire. Can't even make a joke. And it didn't stop there. They also went after Newsmax, which is a news organization. They went after James O'Keefe when he was with Project Veritas. What speech was targeted for censorship? Jim Jordan says, true information, jokes, and political opinions. Here's a few examples. There's this one from Donald Trump. Georgia counties using same software as Michigan counties also encounter glitch. So he was sharing a Breitbart article, and then he says, what a total mess this election has been. So he put election in quotes and said that there's a glitch in the software, and he shares this, and this is true information, and yet Donald Trump was censored for that. Tom Tillis, Senator Tom Tillis, thank you for this historic victory, North Carolina. Looking forward to 6 more years of fighting for you and your family in the U.S. Senate. Why in the world would that be censored? Harmeet Dillon, she is an attorney. She says, polling is going smoothly in many parts of Pennsylvania, according to my colleagues. Have spoken to multiple lawyers there, but Philadelphia has rampant problems. In the Democrat A.G. Shapiro, who's on the ballot, giving them cover. We're documenting and handling this. Vote. Few more examples. Newt Gingrich. Pennsylvania Democrats are methodically changing the rules so they can steal the election. It's amazingly open, dishonest, ruthless, and will work unless the state, especially Philadelphia, is flooded with law enforcement. Governor Mike Huckabee said, stood in the rain for an hour to early vote today. When I got home, I filled in my stack of mail-in ballots and then voted the ballots of my deceased parents and grandparents. They vote just like me. So clearly he was making a joke, but he was basically saying if you could just mail in, I mean, he's making a point, and that is that if you could just mail in ballots, then you could just fill them out for anybody and send them in. Jim Jordan goes on to say, who did we miss? Did you have a social media post that was targeted by the EIP? So if you did, maybe contact him. Says it's clear why Stanford produced these after judiciary GOP and the weaponization threatened contempt. This was part of the letter that he sent. The committee's subpoena imposes legal obligations to comply and produce responsive materials. Thus, your client's refusal to produce documents responsive to the committee's subpoena 4 weeks after the subpoena return date is highly concerning. Accordingly, the committee expects the SIO will complete its production of responsive documents in full by no later than Wednesday, June 14th, 2023 at 5 p.m. If Stanford fails to comply in full with the subpoena's demands, the committee may be forced to consider the use of one or more enforcement mechanisms. Thank you for your client's attention to this matter. So it took them being threatened before they finally gave up some of this information. And he has put this all in a report that anybody can get to. We will put that link down below for you. There is, but it is the weaponization of disinformation, pseudo experts and bureaucrats, how the federal government partnered with universities to censor Americans' political speech. And this is, again, very frightening. It's frightening that this was done, and it was done. Who are these people who are running the government, who are undermining duly elected officials, going to social media and saying, we want this censored, we think this is misinformation? Who are these people? They should not be working in the government. We need to be finding them, and we need to be rooting out this sort of deep state, which is probably a bunch of, a variety. And when you use that term, it's what does that mean exactly? There's probably a lot of powerful forces at play in the deep state, but there's also just average people working as average bureaucrats in Washington who think that they're doing what's best for the country. They view themselves as patriots. And they think that, well, this is the right thing to do because America, I got to save the country. And Donald Trump is a threat. He's a fascist. He's going to be terrible for democracy. We have to stop him. We have to stop him. We saw that rhetoric all throughout the media. One side just really demonizing, saying that Donald Trump was the Antichrist, essentially, and that he needed to be stopped. And they would go to there would be no stopping them from the lengths that they would go to stop Donald Trump. And that included censoring a sitting president. So we really need to be investigating this and looking into this more. I hope that this doesn't stay political. A lot of times, when Congress gets involved and they're the ones doing these investigations, a lot of times nothing happens unless it's bipartisan. And the problem with this is it's not bipartisan. It is one side of the aisle saying we believe there's a rise of censorship throughout social media, censorship of Americans. And the problem is, and the reason why we're not going to have anything done is because this is not bipartisan, because the other side is saying, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Censorship. We don't have enough censorship is what one side is saying. Censor more. We need more censorship. And then what we're seeing right now is that there is a bipartisan push for censorship. Right? You've got those who say we don't want censorship. They only don't want censorship when it's directed at them or directed at people they agree with. And the other side saying, well, we want censorship because we don't agree with those people, so they need to be censored. And then as soon as something is found that they could all agree on, they suddenly all want censorship. So this is another reason why nothing's going to happen, because they weaponize it. Both sides weaponize it when it's convenient for them. They're hypocritical. So we can't make progress because people can't see past their own emotions. Their own emotions end up clouding their judgment. And now what you have is Palestinian Rashida Tlaib censured by the US government, by Congress, by her colleagues for speech. And it was a bipartisan effort to censure her, mostly Republicans. On that one, it was mostly Republicans standing in line together saying she should be silenced. We do not like this speech, and this speech is unacceptable, is what they said when Rashida Tlaib spoke. People can say things that you find abhorrent or offensive, and the point of America is we listen to it and we counter it with more speech, with better speech. That's the way we handle things. But how can we claim to be a country that is for freedom of speech? How can we claim to be a country that values the freedom of speech when it is so obvious by the actions of our government, from this report that was put out by the Committee of the Judiciary, Jim Jordan, showing that the government worked in collusion with big tech to silence and censor Americans and politicians. You got that, but then you've also got blatant calls for censorship in our members of Congress. They're just outwardly saying it. One way is undermined, in the shadows, doing it under the surface, deep state style. And then the other way is just blatant in your face. We just don't like your speech and we're censoring you, and you shouldn't be allowed to say those things. It's hate speech, is what they essentially said to Rashida Tlaib. So we have a problem. We have a culture problem. We have a big culture problem in this country. And that is that we have to defend the right to speak, even if we don't like it. I've really admired in these moments somebody like Candace Owens, who I don't agree with on a lot of things. Candace and I do not agree, but we agree on this. And Candace has been a fierce fighter lately for true free speech. She says, I don't like what they're saying, but I'm not going to ruin their lives. I'm not going to go after them and try to make it to where they can never work again, make it to where their speech is silenced, make it to where they have to pay consequences for the rest of their lives for saying something that they probably will regret in 10 years. How many people regretted the things they said 10 years ago, or their minds changed, or they evolved? And so she stood firm, saying, no, we need to be able to have conversation, disagree, really disagree, think that the other person is completely immoral even, and not only not censor them, but then don't go and try to ruin them, because that cancel culture is cancerous to our society. And that is something that very few people today are standing up for. It's a very, the dwindling of the free speech warriors has really been shown lately. And it goes every time there's a big hot button issue, starting with Donald Trump, the election of Donald. I'm sure it started before then, but let's just start there for this. Starting with Donald Trump's election, people wanting to silence the Nazis and the fascists and the white supremacists and the white nationalists that are dangerous in our country. Then going to COVID, silencing the anti-vaxxers. How dare they? They're killing grandma. Then going to the election, silencing those who want to say that the election is anything but democratic, then going and silencing people who were unwilling to support the endless money to Ukraine. Those people are Putin puppets. We must silence them. To now silence the people who are critical of Israel. They're anti-Semites, and they just, so it's just this. It's just find the hot button issue of the moment, and suddenly, when I forgot the trans one as well, there's a lot of, we got to silence these people who are, and on that one, it's both sides saying, well, we got to silence those who are pro-trans, and we've got to silence the people who are against trans. Everybody wants to silence everybody. It's just pick your hot button issue. And every time when it's you and you feel it and you say, no, but this is different. If you find yourself saying that, catch yourself and say, okay, it's not. Everybody's got something they feel like this is different. This is the thing. This is the one. If I don't speak up and silence these people, all hell's going to break loose and society's going to be damned. And we're all going to go down in a fiery ball towards hell or something. It's insanity. And we have to remain principled in moments like these. And that is when we're really, truly tested. We're tested when we feel emotionally so strongly about something And we just really feel we're in the face of evil. That is really when it comes out. It's when you think you're staring evil in the face. It's not just somebody you disagree with. It's not just somebody you just think that their ideas are bad and potentially dangerous if they were enacted. It's somebody you think is evil. And when you're staring down the face of evil, that is when that is when you're true. That is when the truth comes out on, do you stand for free speech or do you not? Because if you're staring evil in the face and you say, okay, this is different, this needs to be silenced, then, okay, everybody's got their thing. Most people have got their thing. We try not to have that thing and catch ourselves. I certainly try, and it's difficult. It's difficult to do. Sometimes we have those moments where we're like, this is the thing. But we have to remember it's rarely ever the thing. And the thing that does work, what we do know works, is more speech, better speech, and convincing people. Convince them. Don't silence them. Don't hide. That just makes things worse. You're going to exacerbate the problem. Instead, talk it out. Listen. Hash it out. And probably through that, you're going to come to some actual agreement. It's like the old saying, you attract more honey with, what is it? You attract, you know what I mean, right? The attraction, the honey and the vinegar. I don't remember the phrase, but you get it, right? You get it. All right, guys, we will put that link to that report down below, and you could check it out and read it for yourself and be shocked about the censorship industrial complex and how it is just really just continued on. All right, do you think that your face enjoyed the summer as much as you did? Because I know I always end up with more dark spots and damage than before the season began, but that's where Genucel comes in. Genucel is an amazing skincare line formulated by a pharmacist who started off just making his cream for locals. And then the locals were like, oh, this is the best stuff ever. And everybody started showing up saying, I want it. And now you can have that same luxury skincare, and it's for both men and women, because we know you guys care about your skin too and how you look. That's okay. Their new Fall Classics package has everything you need to get your skin back in shape, including their new Genucel 3 cream. It starts by treating fine lines, wrinkles, under-eye bags, firmer jawline, gives you a brighter complexion. You're going to have younger, hydrated, healthier-looking skin. So take advantage of the new Genucel Introductory Fall Classics package, which now includes the Deep Firming Serum plus the Classic Anti-Wrinkle Treatment and Puffiness Treatment. And you're going to get it all at 70% off. And here's the Genucel Amazing Guarantee. You're going to see results day one, or you get your money back. So take advantage of the Genucel Most Popular package, which now includes the Dark Spot Corrector, plus the Classic Genucel Bags and Puffiness Treatment and Immediate Effects, all at about 70% off, so you can try the best skincare in the world for yourself, completely risk-free. Go to Genucel.com/Kim today and start looking years, even decades younger tomorrow. Again, Genucel.com/Kim.